Hey everybody, welcome to Shifty's Club. Today I'll be talking about why you haven't seen me in a while and what I plan to do until then. Guys, the reason why you haven't seen me on YouTube in a while is because I've been trying to make OBS work on my computer, and I have two desktops, two laptops. I can't get it to work on either one of them. So I decided to seek out some professional help from basically players in the community that are much better than I am with technology. And a lot of them pretty much said straight up, I need a new computer, one that can actually handle OBS, the webcam software, and the TCGO all at once. And none of my computers, from what they know, can do it and do it efficiently. So that's pretty much the only problem. Um, So until then, I want to be doing videos just like this because it's the only way I know how to do videos without it. And all that practice for nothing. No. But so until then, I'll just keep doing videos like this. Maybe I can get some more up before I get a computer. Whenever I decide to get one, I'm gonna have to have some of the players help me. Figure out which one's probably the best one to get. If you guys have any suggestions on what computers to get, that would be very, very good for those who record OBS via Logitech webcam and TCGO. Let me know because I definitely could use all the suggestions possible. But anyway, let's throw that aside. Let's get to something else. So, the new 2018 format, we have about equal number of standard and expanded regionals this year, and from what I can tell, things are getting off to a pretty messy start. We noticed that there are going to be a lot of changes in the meta. There are a lot of decks that are emerging, and there are a lot of decks that are changing. Um, we didn't expect a few of these decks before Worlds to ever come on the competitive scene, and then all of a sudden here they are. Like Ho-Oh Salazzle was really not regarded as a top deck until sawn at the World Championships by Japanese players. Same thing with Garbodor and Golisopod. Those two decks basically emerged out of nowhere, and now the US players are starting to say, hey, these decks are pretty good. Let's give them a try in our new standard metagame. Obviously, losing things like VS Seeker, Lysander, which is not really that much of a loss thanks to Guzma, Mega Rayquaza, even though Sudowoodo's in, so that really doesn't count. Shaman EX for draw support. There's a lot of things that we lose to the rotation that does make it a little more difficult to play in this metagame, but of course things are getting a lot slower. Without VS Seeker, without Trainer's Mail, without Shaman, things are definitely slowing down. And I think that's going to be something that we have to adjust in the metagame is our play style according to how the new metagame's going to affect us, how the new system of cards works, because everybody's going to have the same few cards in their deck. Everybody's going to be running Professor Sycamores, Ints, Guzmas, Ultra Balls, Tapu Leles. Those are cards that every single deck's going to have in the format, with maybe one or two exceptions for random decks that I don't know what. But anyway, with the slower format is making it much easier for Stage 2 decks to emerge. And most of these Stage 2 decks with 230, even 250 HP, like Gardevoir GX and Metagross GX respectively, are starting to see themselves in among the top decks in the format. Now, what I kind of want to do is go over some of the some of the decks from the few past tournaments and kind of go over which ones that did well, like SARS top 8s, and the other ones that may be able to clinch themselves as decks going into Crimson Invasion. But now that we got Burning Shadows, there's really not much to say about Burning Shadows. Mostly we get Guzma, Acerola's kind of sort of card. Has a little bit going for it, not a whole lot with other decks. Um, but Burning Shadows gives us probably another option outside of Lysander. Other than that, there's not a whole lot of influence, other than maybe some GXs. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get to the some of the standard decks, because I know most players here love standard. You guys know I love expanded. Expanded is my baby, so like I love expanded format. But anyway, so one of the decks that we saw at the World Championships actually was able to slide its way into our Tier 1 metagame, and that's Golisopod Garbodor. Now, Golisopod Garbodor basically, for those of you who don't know, and I'm sure everybody watching this knows what all these decks do, but I'm going to go ahead and recap for those who may not be accustomed to some of the decks and some of the actual Pokemon involved. Golisopod's main threat is to use a 1 energy attack for 120 damage called First Impression. Now, it says 30, but if you read the text carefully, it says that this Pokemon was on your bench during this turn. It does 90 damage. So basically, you switch out 2 Golisopod back and forth, doing 120, and with 210 HP, it's a huge wall to try to absorb some damage and do stuff like that. But one of my favorite things that some players do, and I think a lot of players are switching over to this version more than others, is running the Golisopod GX with Max Potion. Now, Golisopod GX with Max Potion is absolutely amazing, especially those variants that run multiple Grass Energy and only use Garbodor for the ability. Now, there's some that play one attack Garbodor and then throw in 4 Rainbow Energy for I don't know what reason. And I still like the ones where the Golisopod and ability Garbodor are more working together. But we do have some players who are starting to throw in cards like Tapu Fini GX, and even one of my homeboys, Tyler Schmuggerow here in Georgia, starting to get up there in the world as a player. Basically talked about Tapu Fini before I ever saw it in an actual deck in competitive play, and I was kind of surprised that he called the card before any one of us had even seen it. So I'm sure a lot of players are starting to see stuff like this. Like, a lot of us are getting more adapted to knowing what's going to happen or what cards are going to excel in the metagame. But I like the Tapu Fini version. And with the Tapu Fini, I understand why players play like 4 Rainbow, but at that point you might want to play more Garbodor attacks. But I really love the Golisopod with more of the ability. But you're going to see a lot of decks that run maybe a 3/3 Golisopod. You're definitely see a 2 ability Garbodor and at least 1 attack. A lot of players are sticking to 2 ability, 2 attack, and 4 breakpoint Trubbish. You have the 1 Tapu Fini GX because everyone loves that nice little GX attack. And if anybody doesn't know what Tapu Fini's GX attack is, it's basically shuffle the defending Pokemon cards attached to it in your opponent's deck, and then you can't do it if they don't have any active, or if they don't have any bench Pokemon. I think the only Pokemon that can literally shuffle or discard straight up without having a bench is Beware GX, and no one's going to use Beware GX. But anyway, they generally will run one of those. A lot of players are now starting to run, instead of 1 Tapu Koko, are starting to run 2 or 3 Tapu Koko promos in their deck for that flying flip, get that spread 20 going, and just try to see how much damage they can just pile onto the board. It's a nice 1 prize attacker, 110 HP, free retreat, and it's arguably the best technical attacker in the game. And I say that because it's not anywhere near a primary attacker like Golisopod or Garbodor. It basically helps you set up the board, which is very nice. I like the flying flip a lot. And even in expanded, you'll see a player like me who's going to try some kind of crazy crap like Tapu Koko with Boundaries Across Dusknoir just because I can. At least online, not in real life. No way. But anyway, that's moreover what you're going to see. A lot of players are, as far as trainers, are liking Sycamores, Inns, Guzma, Acerola, all at least 3 ofs. You're going to see Bridget as a 1 of in every single Golisopod Garbodor list, at least 1, maybe 2. That's only because Tapu Lele for Bridget early game is by far one of the best setup strategies for most, or pretty much every 90X deck in the game right now, with the exception of just a few decks, one in tier 3 and a lot that aren't even in tier. And that one is Sylvia. But anyway, basically, Ultra Balls are going to be your biggest asset. Everything else is going to be Fill Blower, Rescue Stretcher, whatever you want. And then you choose your lines of Floatstone, Choice Band, just whatever floats your boat. And then your energy is generally Double Colorless, Rainbow, and Grass. And it can vary what you like, but there's going to be a lot of discussion between what's the perfect list, what's not the perfect list. I even see some players who absolutely just like who just like to attempt to throw a Feeny down on the bench against like Volcanion and be like, okay, Rainbow, don't Guzma me. Rainbow, don't Guzma me. And throw Grass. And, try some Hydro Shot or something. There's a guy who was doing that to me online. It was crazy. I think he was, and I was trying my Turtonator Volcanion, and he was doing this crazy crap. I'm like, what? So basically, it's kind of weird, but Tapu Fini, I think it's only used as it's Tapu Storm GX, to be honest. Tapu Koko is nice. It's going to be a 3 count, 2 or 3 count probably in every deck now. Especially a lot of what I've seen, Bremen kind of had more of a European playstyle. A lot of players preferred more techs, except for, I think, Tameo Cameron's probably the only guy who does not like techs in his deck. Tord goes for a lot of consistency, but he had to play a lot of techs in his deck in order to get it to work. Tameo Cameron's is the only person I think that even played anything that without like techs in his deck. Like everything was just straight up consistency, except maybe like I think 1 rescue stretcher, but then at the same time he plays 2 super rods, so who am I to say? But anyway, so you got Garbodor Golisopod is arguably the most popular deck right now. Do I think it's the best? Definitely not. The deck I think is the best right now, as far as being best deck in format, is definitely going to be Gardevoir. Now, Gardevoir is basically has an attack, Infinite Force is 30 times the number of energy attached to both active Pokemon. So yes, it's like an Yveltal or a Mewtwo. It's basically Mewtwo, Mega Mewtwo EX, except without the 10 extra damage. But the thing that everybody loves about it is its ability, Secret Spring, and I think that's the name of the ability. Anyway, it you are able to attach Fairy Energy from your hand to one of your Pokemon once in your turn with the ability. So you have 2 or 3 Gardevoir GX sit on the bench. You can do it up to 2 or 3 times, and generally, you don't always go for your active Gardevoir attacking. You generally can set up another one on the bench and just get it ready for action. Most of the time, you're going to see players play in 3 and very few players play in 4 Gardevoir GX. The ones who play 4 just cut the Gallade altogether. And you may see a lot of players coming up with this new legendary collection or whatever it is. Anyway, you're going to see a lot of players just dock Octillery altogether, just cut it from the list and throw in Zoroark GX and just forget Gallade even exists. A lot of players are going to do this because they feel like Zoroark has more consistent draw. It can be used even with a large hand. It can help you get resources in the discard pile if you ever need resources in the discard pile for any reason. But it's basically just extra draw support. Zoroark is. You're going to see a lot of players who opt for Zoroark just because they like it, but it's also a nice backup attacker against something like Metagross where they can't one-shot you to death. Like even Gallade gets one shot because it only has 150 HP. But something like Zoroark with a 210 can force a swing for like 120 for a double colorless. Since you're already running double colorless, it's perfectly fine. And it does give you a more manageable Metagross matchup. And I think that's why more players are going to be playing Zoroark inside of theirs. But if Metagross, for some reason, just like literally kicks the bunker and just quits being a good deck, period, then a lot of players may go back to playing Octillery and the 3 Gardevoir with 1 Gallade. But I think a lot of players are going to swap over because of Zoroark. Zoroark's already going for like 30-40 bucks online for the regular. So you guys might want to get those early. And the same thing goes with Tapu Lele. Tapu Lele is going to be about 100 bucks coming to the next rotation, coming next August in like 10 months, which is pretty far away, but still get them while you can. But anyway, they generally run 3 or 4 Gardevoir. Right now, the majority people are playing 3 Gardevoir with 3 color 4 Ralts. And you're going to see 3 Tapu Lele GX generally. And that's generally because you want your first one for the 1 Bridget in your deck. Some players run 2. I know there's a lot of players at Worlds who decided, hey, I'm just going to run 1 Bridget. And then they just wall because they can't find Bridget or it's priced. And it's like, well, I learned my lesson, so I'm going to play 2 Bridget. And there's a lot of players who play 2 Bridget. I play 2 Bridget in my Gardevoir build online. And I've even got it built in real life. But some of the cards are proxies, but still, because I prefer other decks than Gardevoir. So, and you'll definitely see 1 Gallade. You'll see either a 1/1 Octillery. You'll see some players who opt to run a 2 Remoraid 1 Octillery. But a lot of your more consistent players are just running a 2/2 Octillery and just calling it a day. And most of those 2/2 Octillery players, they chunk out Diancie from the deck altogether. And you'll see Alolan Vulpix in a few of these lists. I don't personally like Alolan Vulpix. I prefer a different style of Gardevoir, which I'll get to in a second. And most decks are going to run 8 Fairy 4 double colorless. That's just the norm. That's what generally works for Gardevoir. You're going to see the exact same setup as the Golisopod Garbodor deck. You're going to see high counts of Sycamore and Nguzma. And then you're going to see the 1 Bridget and maybe a couple Acerola. And the reason why is because Acerola isn't generally for Gardevoir GX, although you can use it for that. It's generally to pick up something to allow room for another attacker. Like, say you have an Alolan Vulpix that you used early game, and you need to get something down pronto. You need to get something down on that bench. You can basically Acerola pull it up. I've seen players who just pull up Gardevoir GX and then try to get it back down on the bench. There's some who have the rare candy in hand and say, oh, wow, here we go. Acerola, I got the rare candy. There's a Ralts on the bench. Rare candy Gardevoir, throw down the Ralts again. That's perfectly fine. But you pretty much have to guarantee yourself the rare candy in hand to do stuff like that. So I do understand Acerola, but it's still only a 1 or 2 of in the deck. Some players are playing Parallel City. Some players are playing Fairy Garden. Personally, I like the Fairy Garden over Parallel City, but I do understand the Parallel City option. But in a build that's just Gardevoir, there's literally no other real options in the deck other than Gardevoir, maybe Gallade. Definitely Fairy Garden. But in another variant, I kind of like Parallel City even better, but I get to it in a second. Definitely Ultra Balls and Rare Candies are at 4 counts. Everything else, like your tools, your tech cards like Field Blowers, Rescue Stretchers, Float Band, or Floatstone, or Choice Band, they're definitely at 1s and 2s depending on what you believe or what you've tested. Because even then, like, 3 Choice Band can be useful inside of Gardevoir at some points, but it's only when you're playing against the mirror like way too many times to count. Because at that point, you're needing 8 combined energy or a Choice Band on both active Pokemon to get it to go off. So that's kind of the call of a player. But as for my favorite variant, is one that I've been thinking of, I've been running, practicing on mine for a while, and it's just now catching on to be a top deck, is going to be the Gardevoir GX with Sylveon GX. Now, the reason I like this better is because I cut out Alolan Vulpix, period, from this deck. I can cut out Dancy, I can cut out the Octillery Remoraid and the Gallade. I run 4 Gardevoir GX. I run the, I'm going to be running the Zoroark with it, the Tapu Lele. And basically, I'm just going to Magical Ribbon for all the cards I need, force my opponent to use all their ends early game, and then if I do get off to a good lead, which I should be able to get off to a pretty good lead, I start to get close to winning the game. My opponent doesn't have ways to play in because they played them all early game, so they have no way to disrupt my setup. Zoroark would still help in that regard a lot, and I would just basically have all the resources I need and just go on and win the game. But Sylveon's basically that magical card that just lets you set up the very next turn as long as you're not end. And people's like, well, it's a bad card because you can get end. I said, well, you could get end, but it's not guaranteed. I said, people argue way too much over what could happen over what will happen. And generally 3 times out of 10, you'll get end. The other 7 times, your opponent doesn't have it in their hand or cannot play it. Generally, most of the time, your opponent's going to have a Sycamore or going to need a Bridget. So, say your opponent misses anything in their hand, that's a chance that they don't get. Generally, they bridge it for the first turn, and then they waste their Lele on that resource, and now they have to use Alolan Vulpix to fetch another Lele to try to end you, and you've already used your Magical Ribbon, something like that. I mean, there's plenty of other scenarios where Sylveon is still good, and I think Sam Chin has proven that for me. I don't have to go online and prove it to people like I've been telling people. They're like, oh no, Sylveon's not good, and I was like, oh, Ian just kills Sylveon. Now I get online, and everyone's saying, oh yeah, Sylveon's great, and I said, well, you just said it wasn't good, like, not even that long ago. But anyway, I currently like the Gardevoir Sylveon version. Of course, I'm that guy who doesn't run the Gallade, but that's just me. That is like nobody else. And the Premonition Blade isn't really that much to me, because if I'm already getting all the cards I need early game, there's really nothing else I need to fetch from that deck. The only thing Zoroark's going to do for me is basically to draw into more cards, try to give me maybe a few more options to make the game a little more smooth, or if I do get down to 2 cards late game, I can try to use Zoroark to draw into cards that I need if my deck's thin enough, and generally is. But yeah, Gardevoir's another really good option. I absolutely love it to death. The other and probably last tier 1 deck right now is going to be Drumpa Garbodor. Now, a lot of people are probably gonna turn off the video after this, but I still think Drumpa Garbodor is a top tier deck, and I think it's going to stay that way until someone shows me otherwise. I just can only say what I've seen with my own 2 eyes. Drumpa GX seems to be a very solid attacker. Things like Golisopod Garbodor are running mostly special energy, and they can't handle Drumpa very well. So Drumpa's a perfect attacker against something that's just going raw on special energy. And against things like Gardevoir that rely on abilities to flood energy down on the field, you have things like the ability Garbodor, but you also have ways to discard special energy via Drumpa and its Righteous Edge. And I absolutely love Righteous Edge. I fell in love with that card the minute I saw it and it released. I bought 4 of them, so. But yeah, the Gardevoir is pretty much just killed by the ability Garbodor. And in case they are able to get some sort of a setup, you can do an easy fetch of an Espeon EX. Grab Espeon EX in your deck, attach any 1 energy to it, throw it up in the active slot, and just devolve Gardevoirs. And say your opponent used say Sylveon and just grabbed a bunch of rare candies for Gardevoirs, and they used 2 rare candies and they played 2 Gardevoirs. So what you could do is you could then use Devolution Shine and basically pull back those 2 Gardevoir. Now they have to grab Curlias or have to try to fetch more rare candy, and it really does hurt an opponent whenever stuff like that happens, even if they have no damage on the board. But say they do, say you're able to get some damage on the board. I know things like Po-Town really help, but Po-Town's not going to be that useful if your opponent rare candies. It's just going to be a way for them to try to advance their board state a little better. Of course, if they try to then go back and re-evolve via Curlia, you can just use it again if they're not unable to do anything, and they're very cautious about that. I know a lot of players are. In early game Espeon EX versus with a Garbodor set up on the backfield is pretty much just a solid game loss for Gardevoir if you play it out correctly. A player like Tord Reklov is going to definitely make Gardevoir have an auto loss against his deck, because I mean he has played it so wonderfully in the past. I remember watching the Bremen stream and I thought, wow, this is actually really good. And I highly suggest anyone who's playing Drumpa Garbodor to definitely take a look at Tord's list on Pokemon.com. And you have to go scroll down to the you have to go to the Play Pokemon page, scroll down to event results, and then click on the Bremen Regionals, and then click on the drop down and see Tord's list. It's amazing. Like, I took this, played it online for a little bit to see what I thought, and there's only maybe 3 cards I would change myself, but that's only because the format changed. And I know Tord probably agree with the same moves I made, so. But anyway, Drumpa Garbodor is absolutely amazing. The attack Garbodor, I like the way Tord does it. He plays 2 attack Garbodor and 2 ability Garbodor. The attack Garbodor is generally only for those decks that require itself to use a lot of items, and I mean a lot of items, because at times Garbodor is just going to be doing so much damage to you, and then having things like field blowers. I know some players prefer 2. I like 3, but that's my own play style. I like 3 field blower inside of it, especially with some of the new stuff we're seeing in this format. Some of the new adjustments players are making. I definitely like 3 field blower, and it really does give Garbodor an edge in getting items into the discard pile, because that 1 field blower is adding 40 extra damage, which is on average 40 extra damage. Because most of the time you're going to discard 2 tool cards in that deck, or 2 of your opponent's tool cards, sorry. But anyway, I really like the Garbodor. But more of the same is going to be the mirror match. How you play the mirror match completely depends on how well you've mastered that mirror match. And I'm sure Tord's probably played it a million times. In the mirror match, I'm more of a guy who likes going early game Righteous Edge, try to throw all of your opponent's special energy out, pretty much forcing your opponent to throw stuff up on the bench. You're going to see a lot of players who's like, okay, Rainbow Energy to the bench, Garbodor, throw up Drumpa to see what I can do, or even just attach a Psychic Energy up front. I mean, I like the attach Psychic to Drumpa up front, and probably Big Wheel turn 1 if I'm going second, or just attach a Psychic anyway on turn 1 and pass. That's probably how I play the mirror match. Is that start is generally my favorite way of doing stuff. But other than that, I mean, the mirror match is going to be pretty much the toughest one. You just have to play that match almost flawlessly to guarantee you're going to beat it. But anyway, those are the 3 Tier 1 decks in the format. I could talk all about the second and third tier, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to give you rundowns of some of the Tier 2. Like, Tier 2 right now, in my own opinion, is going to be Metagross. Metagross is one of those decks that is it going to be at the very top because it struggles to output the correct amount of damage, and at the same time, a lot of decks can do the same thing it does, but for probably less energy, less reliant on abilities. Don't get me wrong, Metagross is a wall. It's a huge tank, and I love it. But at the same time, it's not putting out as much as other decks like Golisopod for 1 energy is putting up 2 shots. Metagross is always going to be 2-shot in everything unless it's got the choice band. Then it's only one-shotting the basic GXs and EXs, and sometimes even coming shy of that against cards like Ho-Oh GX and Lapras GX at 190 HP. Metagross is generally going to be played now with, in my opinion, I like Necrozma GX in some, but my favorite Metagross variant is Metagross with Tyrantrum EX. Now, most people just like, oh, Shifty, you don't know what you're talking about. Well, actually give it a shot, because I've actually played it online. It is really good. Now, here's how you play it. You play it with Smeargle with its ability, and what it allows you to do is with Second Coat, you take a basic energy attached to your active Pokemon and swap it with a different basic energy in the discard pile. So you have that fighting energy. If you ever have that fighting energy in the discard pile for at any point, you then do the Second Coat, throw the fighting energy onto Tyrantrum, and then you need nothing but 2 metal and a colorless, so they can be just all metal energy. And trust me, I really do like it. It's a really nice attacker, and it does solve a lot of problems. Now, is it the best, absolute best thing? No. But it does solve a lot of problems for the current metagame. You can one-shot Golisopod, which is probably a bad matchup already for you, so being able to one-shot it is pretty good. To one-shot Gardevoir, you're pretty much going to have to play Professor Kukui, which means a heightened count, but you're already attacking with Metagross, so Metagross is going to one-shot anything, but some players are going to try to stall you, so just be ready for that. And Gardevoir is going to stall Metagross a lot to try to get those knockouts and wins. I've seen Gardevoir beat Metagross, but I think having that having a secondary option is good. Now, as far as playing against Ho-Oh Salazzle, you're pretty much screwed unless you play Tyrantrum, because even Necrozma is not taking a knockout without a choice band. I do like the Tyrantrum version, but Necrozma can get the job done. You just need 3 energy and a choice band, or 4 energy to pretty much knock out any of the basic GXs. And if they're playing Salazzle, it's pretty much game over, because 2 fire and a choice band, they're knocking out every Metagross in existence. So I know kind of sounds weird the way I'm saying it, but Metagross is definitely dropping itself out of the tier 1, and it's sitting about in the tier 2 category. At least that's the way I see things. Along with it in tier 2 is Vikabulu. Vikavolt being able to attach those energy from the deck to your Pokemon and play a Lightning and a Grass. Combined with Bulu, which basically just discards them. Instead of doing 120, does 180. Choice Band is 210 with a Professor Kukui is pretty much the only way to knock out Gardevoir in one hit. It'll work, but like I said before, it's definitely not the best, because other decks are able to easily get around a lot of the damage done this way. Like, since Golisopod is up there as one of the top decks, reaching that damage output requires Choice Band. And then again, you have to hope that all of those items in your discard pile are going to come back to haunt you via Garbodor. And that generally happens a lot. And you generally don't attack with Tapu Koko Promo a lot in the deck, so there's no real way to get around having Choice Band against decks like that. When it comes to Gardevoir, you ain't getting a one-hit knockout. I don't care what you do. It's just simple. You can Choice Band Professor Kukui, but you can't do that a million times. That's just how it works. You pretty much have to play Espeon EX in order to do anything in that deck. And at that point, you may as well just continuously attack with Tapu Koko Promo, and then just out of nowhere throw out an Espeon EX and try to win the game that way. But how many decks are already doing that? A lot. And then against Metagross, I just really don't see how they can compete with Metagross outside of Vikavolt GX. Vikavolt GX is allowing them to avoid a Choice Band KO via Metagross and have about 240 HP and be able to dish out a nice little attack. It's GX attack that spreads 60 damage, so it allows for easier KOs on Metagross, and they're not just going to spread those max potions all over the place and be like, oh, well, yeah, I'm just casually playing 4 max potion, I got them all in my hand, max potion, max potion, max potion. No, it'll never happen, trust me. And people don't give Vikavolt GX enough credit, and there's some players who do understand how well it does perform against Metagross. But if Metagross isn't big, there's no reason playing it. There really isn't. Also, another deck that's seeing its way into a lot is the Ho-Oh-Salazzle. Ho-Oh-Salazzle's, again, another Tier 2 deck. Ho-Oh, turn 1, Kiawe, you've got the most solid attacker in the game, pretty much the easiest turn one power up, and then turn 2 you just go to town on your opponent. There's nothing really much to say. If they knock out that first Ho-Oh on turn 2 before you ever get an attack off, it's pretty much you really have to scramble to get anything done. And just throwing a Kiawe onto a bench Ho-Oh isn't going to solve any problems, because let's just say they're probably not going to fill up their bench to the point where they can't just grab Lele, Guzma, and then go for a knockout. You know, there's a lot of things that can knock out Ho-Oh GX in one hit in this format, and there's a lot of stuff that can disrupt Ho-Oh. Of course, you're eventually going to run out of Kiawe. The one thing that I do like about this deck is that when it is able to get that turn 2 attack and grab the knockout, like say Phoenix Burn with a Choice Band, maybe a Volcanion EX, Steam Up, whatever is needed, grab that knockout, and in the process start powering up Salazzle GXs on the bench so you can start hitting that 50 times the number of prizes you've taken this game. It does work, and it is very capable of doing a lot. But a lot of players, they're trying to run 1 baby Volcanion instead of 2 or 3, so they have 1 prize options to grab even 1 prize late, closer to mid game. So the Salazzle GX is doing 150, even if you're only taking 3 prizes. You can still be doing 150 plus Choice Band, mate. And it still can do 180, can knock out a lot of things. And that's what I'm telling people. It's basically about observing for the gameplay. A lot of players aren't doing well with Ho-Oh Salazzle, so they're tossing the deck in general, because a lot of players don't understand some of the kickbacks of the deck. I've played this deck extensively online just to see what I think, and I've played pretty much every deck that I'm talking about right now. I've played it extensively just so I know exactly what it does. I can play from the eye of the player. I know exactly what they're doing, so I can get ready to play against it. And anyway, most of the time they're going to be played like 3 Kiawe, the only deck that plays 4 Guzma and 4 Sycamore. And generally the high Sycamore count is only to get those fire energy into the discard pile, so that way you can use the 1 Turtonator GX, use its Nitro Tank GX if you need to do so. Like, a lot of times you will see a Kiawe Ho get knocked out, and the opponent knows if there's a good chance that Ho is going to get knocked out, all I need is 1 energy on Turtonator, get 1 more energy in the discard pile, and boom, I've got 5 energy at discard pile, Nitro Tank GX, attach, attach. And then now I can get back into the game in some regard. And it does work. It's definitely a work in progress for a lot of decks, but even sometimes you can Nitro Tank GX yourself 1 energy and Ho-Oh 4, but at that point you may as well just do Kiawe to 1. But you can always go, okay, I've got a Turtonator, let's attach, go to Salazzle, attach, and Baby Volcanion on the bench, attach. And now I've got a nice spread set up. So Ho-Oh GX Salazzle isn't really a top deck, but it's sitting there at tier 2 because it can definitely take a tournament if played correctly. And I think it does take the right player to who's played it extensively, knows the deck inside and out, to win with the deck. That's pretty much it for Tier 2. Now, as far as expanded goes, and I know it's getting kind of long, guys. I think it's, what is it, 40 minutes. Holy crap. I'm sorry to keep you guys this long. But I know a lot of the stuff you watch online is definitely going for over 40 minutes as far as like TCGO videos and stuff. But anyway, I think this information is very good for you guys to hear. Especially if you're willing to sit and listen to this, I think I can impart some good knowledge for you guys. And this is going to be very helpful because Daytona is coming around the corner, and I think a lot of you guys need to hear a lot of this. For most of what I've seen in the expanded format, and I love expanded more than anybody, I test this format more than anything, but I guarantee you that I test standard because I know that I'll have to win some standard events or do well in standard events just to get into worlds that I can't do it on expanded events alone. Because there's no way I'm gonna be able to win two back-to-back expanded regionals. There's no way. Although I have very high confidence that I'm gonna easily be able to top 32 all of the expanded regionals if I go. As long as I don't dead draw, I'll be fine. Should be anyway. Anyway, the number one deck in expanded by far is going to be Night March. Night March is the most powerful, most consistent deck in the format. I don't like Night March. I may end up playing it at some point, and if I do, it's only because it was the only choice that I could make for that tournament. Obviously, Night March, you guys know, Joltik, Pumpkaboo, and Lampedoll from Phantom Forces all have the Night March attack, 20 times the number of Pokemon you discard pop with attack Night March. Anyway, since you have a potential total of 12 Night March attackers, generally you can get in the discard pile, about 10 or 11 of them, and then put one or two on the bench at a time. You have access to cards like Rescue Stretcher, even Revive. Give the cards like Tauros GX, which can inflict just a little bit of damage, and can generally be a nice little throw-in attack. Like Mad Bull is an amazing GX since you literally have no other GX attack. So you throw in something like Marshadow. Marshadow is a good card. Marshadow has an ability that allows you to copy the attack of any basic Pokemon in your discard pile. So you copy it, say Marshadow just gets just a tiny bit of damage, and your opponent has something you can easily take out, like Metagross or something. I was like, and it's like, okay, play the Fighting Fury Belt, and Metagross couldn't get the Field Blower, so we're going to throw 150 on it. So what we're going to do is Ninja Boy to Tauros, and then just surprise my opponent out of nowhere, take 2 prizes. I like the Tauros call, and I think people play Tauros for the wrong reason, to be honest. Now, some players are going to be playing 3 Shaman, 1 Lele. I like 3 Shaman, but I do like 2 Lele. Most players are going to be playing an Oranguru. I honestly do not like the Tauros version, although it's probably one of the most tested variants out there. I don't really like it. But that's just me, though. That's me. And there's a lot of players who are trying to make 2 or 3 Marshadow GX work, and at that point you just may not even run Night March, because I understand you want to save those, you want to do as much damage as possible, those Night Marchers in the discard pile, but giving up 1 prize as opposed to 2 just allows for so much more flexibility, especially when you can just abuse teammates over and over and over. It just makes it so much better, because, oh wow, I can Revive, search for the DCE, okay, Joltik, bam, bam, attack. I mean, it's pretty good, and it's very consistent, does very well. You will see a lot of players who are going to opt to play 2 special charge instead of 1. Some players playing 1 I don't understand. Obviously, you're going to play 4 Battle Compressor, you're going to play 4 Via Seeker, 4 Ultra Ball, 4 Trainer's Mail. You're going to just get pretty much you're going to have a flux of items, so you're going to play at least half your deck is going to be item cards, which is, it's probably not a good thing if you're going up against Garbodor, but at the same time, Garbodor is never going to beat you because you have literally set up way too fast for it to do anything. But there are some times when Night March just breaks and there's nothing you can do about it, but that's fine because it's not the end of the world. You always get the next round. But anyway, Night March is a very fast, very consistent deck, and it consistently does well, and that's why it deserves a lot of credit. Um, Another deck you're going to see a lot is Turbo Dark. Turbo Dark is generally played with the Darkrai EX from Breakpoint and the Darkrai EX from Dark Explorers. You generally play one of those Dark Explorers Darkrai for the free retreat and 3 of the attack ones because it's just so damn good. You also generally play 2 or 3 Darkrai GX, so you can bring back a Darkrai GX from the discard pile with a Darkness Energy already attached to it, and just power up Darkrai EX's attack even further. And most people say, well, that just makes it so bulky. You have so much, so many Pokemon on the field at one time, and that's why you play Skyfield. Skyfield is by far one of the best supporter or stadium cards for this deck. And the reason why is because Darkrai GX is now a thing. Had Darkrai GX not been a thing, I think that the Shadow Circle would by far be the best option to avoid having to tech for weakness. But anyway, as I talk about weakness, another card that's very useful in this deck is both Yveltal and Yveltal EX. Yveltal is one of those cards that just basically you attach Darkness Energy to it, Oblivion Wing does 30 damage, and you take a basic Dark Energy from your discard pile and attach it to one of your bench Pokemon. And generally you can power up a lot of Pokemon with this. It's generally for mid-late game whenever you can afford offering up one prize attacker and try to get a better board state set up. But generally, most of the time, Yveltal EX is only going to be there whenever you're facing a weakness matchup. And since some people like Grant Manley like to run Carbink Break Lycanroc GX for I don't know what reason, or some players who play like multiple copies of Marsh Shadow GX, I mean, there's really nothing else that you can really say about that because, I mean, that's their own choosing. And they may be teching for the Darkrai because they expect more Darkrai than anything. Then obviously that Yveltal EX may come in very much handy to you, because let's just face it, if weakness is pretty much the only thing holding your deck from winning, you may as well take an Yveltal EX. I know a lot of players are taking Yveltal EX just so they don't face the same fate. A lot of players will play one Sudowoodo because, let's just face it, if Mega Ray shows up and it sets up, you got no shot. You literally have no shot because you cannot fit down 10 basic energy on that disc in that field on turn 2. There's no way. I've tried it and it's not consistently possible. You can't do it game to game to game to game. It just doesn't work. But anyway, you're going to have a lot of Pokemon like Hoopa EX because all of everything in your deck that needs to be placed from your hand on the bench is an EX. The only other non-EX is pretty much Darkrai, and you discard it with Battle Compressor. Hoopa searches out for 3 EXs, does very well. Shaman EX, you guys know what it does, draw cards. Malamar EX is a very unique addition because I did show this a few times online before, Darkrai GX even came out. Because I loved Malamar EX. It was in my expanded Turbo Dark long before Fort Wayne. But the cool thing about this is that your Max Elixirs and stuff, your Dark Patches, they can power up your attackers, and then you attach to Malamar from hand. But you also have access to something like Ninja Boy. And then you can say, okay, I will Rescue Stretcher, and instead of going for just one Darkrai EX or something like that, I can shuffle 3 attackers / other Pokemon I need to get back in my deck, or something like that. Or I can say, okay, let's take that Darkrai EX, shuffle it in the deck, Ninja Boy, now I have it all attached. Let's go in and search out that Malamar, attach. I've got a setup attacker, and then I have another Pokemon that's allowing me to keep my opponent asleep the whole time. So it does work. It really depends on your play style, kind of depends on what you like, what you prefer. Um, Most players are playing anywhere from 12 to 14 Darkness Energy. I like 14 myself. Um, Definitely 4 Dark Patch. I play 4 Max Elixir. A lot of players you're going to see are playing 3, and I'm not sure if I agree with that. I don't think Garbodor is going to be too much of a threat for you to really have to worry about too much. Um, I like Dowsing Machine myself. As far as the A spec, it's amazing. You're going to see a lot of players who play a lot less consistent numbers of supporters and a lot more consistent number of items. Like you're going to see Dark Patches, Max Elixirs, Ultra Balls, VS Seekers, Battle Compressors stuck at 3 or 4 the whole time. Like you're going to see 0 of those cards be at 2 counts or lower, because they're so consistent and they help your deck just set up. It's kind of like Night March. The decks are so fast that other decks that are meant to be really good and just win the game in the long run just never can set up before you do, so they're never able to do anything. And a lot of players are swapping over to a speed-oriented playstyle, and I love speed-oriented playstyle. That's always been my style since forever. um, but anyway, Darkrai EX is definitely one of the other Tier 1 decks in the format, and you will definitely see it just absolutely trash expanded for the longest. And I think another deck that has got its way up to Tier 1 status is Turtonator. Now, I know a lot of people don't want to admit this, but Turtonator with Blacksmith is probably one of the deadliest combinations I have seen in the expanded format. Not only do you have access to Volcanion EX and energy recovery that can literally just go, okay, steam up, choice, and you can basically do 230, 250, and you can do pretty much any amount of damage to knock out anything in one hit, which is absolutely ridiculous. Running 3 or 4 Blacksmith with 3 or 4, generally 4 Turtonator, and having Volcanion on the bench makes it very difficult to come back once opponent sets up. And it doesn't help an opponent when you also have access to a attack called Nitro Tank GX and able to set up 5 basic energy on your field any way you like. So, and I really like this deck and expect this deck to find itself multiple top 8 appearances at Daytona. I mean, that's the deck I want to run. If I go to Daytona, that's the deck I want to run, because I know that it is right now the best possible option for expanded. And I was going to say that everyone's going to want to run Lapras Water Box and expanded, because I mean, I did run that for just a little while in some local league tournaments, but nothing real big. My list is not too different from Sam Chin's list, because I looked at his list because I was curious, and I said, this is a pretty good list, but I'm going to make it better. So I cut one Sycamore. Since I have Sycamore, I have a place at the Sycamores, place at the Junipers, so I decided, you know what, I might as well just fit Junipers in the expanded deck, because I'm not going to, share cards deck to deck if I don't have to. So basically, for Sycamore, I play 3. I cut one of the baby Volcanion because I really don't need that more than one baby attacker, to be honest. I cut the Acerola because the Volcanion EX really doesn't... the Volcanion EX is pretty much the only reason you play Acerola. You can scoop up Turtonator, but, I mean, there's really not going to be too much incentive to scooping up a Turtonator, to be very honest. Obviously, it's got its uses, more mid to late game, but at the same time, you running multiple attackers means that all you pretty much have to do is swap out. That's it. Of course, Acerola could be good, and I think, Sam Chin probably merits one copy Acerola in the deck, and I can understand access to VS Seeker and everything. You can use it multiple times if you need to do so. It just didn't merit enough of a challenge for me to use it, so I cut out completely. Runs Muscle Band, I run Choice Band, I run 3 Choice Bands and 2 Muscle Band, and I just that's where the Acerola cut went. And I cut 2 Fire Energy and because I run 16 Fire Energy, I run 4 Fire and 3 Energy Retrieval because I find it to be a lot more useful sometimes in Computer Search for Dowsing Machine. Basically, 3 Tornado GX, 3 Volcanion EX, 2 Volcanion, 1 Ho GX, 2 Shaman EX, 1 Tapu Lele GX, 16 Fire, 4 Sycamore, 1 In, 1 Colress, 3 Blacksmith, 1 Guzma, 1 Acerola, 1 Kiawe, 1 Karen, 1 Computer Search, 3 Scorched Earth, 4 VS Seeker, 4 Ultra Ball, 2 Battle Compressor, 2 Float Stone, 2 Muscle Band, 1 Field Blower is Sam Chin's list. And you can easily see that online. I mean, I'm looking at it right now, so I tweaked up my list a lot, and I mean, I like it a lot. I mean, you guys, I don't know if you guys really care that much about it, but it's basically just, it's basically an expanded Turtonator that I pretty much modified to where I like it for the next tournament. Obviously, the one thing I have problem with is 16 Fire instead of 14 Fire and like 3 Energy Retrieval, because more often than not, I would rather have the Energy Retrieval because that energy is going to be in the discard pile. I understand having having that many energies so you never have to go for retrieval. However, having constant steam ups going off like over and over and over, I understand why a person would jump to that kind of conclusion, but at the same time, you can't guarantee yourself draw supporters and stuff like turn after turn, whereas you can always guarantee yourself some other stuff. Like I battle compressor for fire energies all the time, so I can nitro tank, or so I can blacksmith, or so I can energy retrieval and steam ups, and it's another tier 1 deck that I absolutely love. And, I mean, I'm probably going to play Turtonator until something else merits itself even worthy of me playing it. So, that's pretty much the top decks for you in the expanded format. As far as Tier 2, Tier 3, there's a huge variety of decks, and it's impossible for me to talk about all of them, because all of these decks do well, and like there's so many Tier 3 decks that a handful of players are going to play them and do well with them because the decks are great. They're just not highly played because some players have been playing forever. Like Tier 3 decks like Stefan Tabako's Primal Groudon. Stefan Tabako is probably the master of Primal Groudon. No one knows how to play it better than him. I mean, hands down. Because he's been playing it forever. So, obviously a player like him will be able to do like day 2 or even top 8 with a Primal Groudon. People say, oh wow, is Primal Groudon really good? It's like, well, it's good. It's just that look who's playing the deck. And then you have plenty of other players that are pretty much the same way. But of course, you know, a lot of your tier 2 decks, you have several Yveltal variants. You have Gardevoir. You have Cernius, that's still big, the Rainbow Road one. And the Cernius is actually getting a little more popular. And there are a few players going online saying that it's gonna become a tier 1 deck here in the future. We'll see what happens. Like as far as like future cards coming out, Zoroark GX is by far going to become one of the top decks and expanded when it releases. And it's not going to be because Zoroark GX itself. Obviously, it with Skyfield's pretty good, but at the same time, I'm saying that you can control the amount of Pokemon on your bench via Skyfield if you have to do so. But most of the time, it's just going to be because the Zoroark GX works so well with its baby version Zorua from Breakthrough and the whiny voice strategy and a Zoro Lock combo. And I do like Zoro Lock a lot, because it utilizes itself in a hand disruption combo with Absol, and then just controls your opponent's top decks and literally runs your opponent dead after so many turns, because you can take easy knockouts with kind of forget the name of Absol's attack, Dunus, and basically return all the energy, and then the next turn you can basically just attach, future sight again. That's going to be a good deck. I think that's pretty much it for tier 2 decks. I mean, you do have, I think Gibson played some kind of Golisopod Garbodor. If it's doing well, I mean, all the power to it, because blend energy is pretty much one of those cards that you literally have to ask yourself whether it's worth playing or not, because it can't be targeted as a grass, fire, psychic, or darkness energy unless it's attached to a Pokemon. But so that's going to be, it's going to be something that you really have to watch out for as far as decks like that. Israel's still playing Yveltal, I think, or at least Yveltal for the most part. And I mean, understand he's been playing Yveltal and Expanded forever, so why not? Even without Archeops, I think he's still doing pretty well. And I think even though Golisopod got, I think was it 2 top 8 finishes at Fort Wayne, I still can't merit itself to be a top tier deck in Expanded. I still got it at tier 2, because the deck's, it's not that it's fairly new, it's that it's not consistently winning like smaller Expanded events like it is in Standard. In Standard, it's consistently winning top cutting. So, and that's what generally how we merit the different tiers in the game. But anyway, guys, I know I've kept you on here for a long time, and I'm sorry about that. But anyway, guys, so you kind of know my situation, and I hope to get a computer pretty soon that is able to run OBS and let me do what I was going to do, so I can give you guys high quality videos and you guys can see all the different decks I'm running, the different techs, how I run things, and it may give you an idea. But anyway, if I had any advice for Daytona for some of you players, play Turtonator. All I can say is if you play my list, and I'll post my list down in the comment section down below so you guys can see it. If you play my list and you don't dead draw, you should have a pretty good, and you play almost flawlessly. There's no doubt that you'll definitely top 32. But that's a kind of a big cycle where it's like you have to play flawlessly, play the deck, and just not dead draw, because dead draw is not really it's not really a controlling factor. But anyway, guys, I leave you with that. If you haven't subscribed, you should subscribe. Post in the comment section down below. And as always, hope you guys had as much fun as I had. And I'll see you guys next time at Shifty's Club.